The classroom door slams shut, the sound echoing like a gavel in the empty hallway. Sarah freezes, her chalk-dusted fingers trembling as she grips the edge of her desk. She's 32, a history teacher with a knack for making the past feel alive. But right now her own present feels like it's unraveling. Her heart races not from the door, but from the woman standing just outside it. Claire, the new English teacher, whose laugh is like wind chimes on a summer porch. Sarah's been fighting this feeling for weeks, the kind that makes her palms sweat and her words stumble. But in a small-town Ohio high school, where whispers spread faster than wildfire, love like theirs is a secret too heavy to carry. The morning sun spills through the windows, painting the room in golden streaks. Sarah hears Claire's footsteps, deliberate, soft, like she's trying not to disturb the silence. The scent of Claire's lavender perfume lingers from their earlier meeting in the teacher's lounge, where their hands brushed over a shared coffee pot, sparking a jolt Sarah still feels in her bones. She sighs a shaky breath and glances at the clock. 7:45 a.m. The kids won't arrive for another 15 minutes, but the weight of the day already presses against her chest. Claire steps into the doorway, her short blonde hair catching the light. At 30, she's bold in a way Sarah envies, unafraid to wear her leather jacket to faculty meetings or quote poetry in casual conversation. "You okay?" Claire asks, her voice low like she's afraid someone might hear. Her green eyes search Sarah's face, and for a moment, the world narrows to just them. Sarah wants to say, "No, I'm not okay. I'm terrified of what I feel for you." But instead she nods, forcing a smile that feels like a lie. The tension between them is a live wire, humming with unspoken words. They've been dancing around it since Claire arrived at Lincoln High 3 months ago. Late-night grading sessions in the library, stolen glances during staff meetings, the way Claire's hand lingered on Sarah's shoulder when they planned the fall talent show. Each moment a brick in a wall they can't acknowledge. Not here, not in a town where the church steeple looms larger than any truth. Sarah turns to the blackboard, erasing yesterday's notes on the Civil War. The chalk dust stings her eyes, or maybe that's just an excuse for the tears threatening to spill. "We need to be careful," she whispers, barely audible over the squeak of the eraser. Claire steps closer, her boots scuffing the linoleum floor. "Careful of what?" she asks, but her tone says she already knows. Sarah's throat tightens. "Careful of us. Of this." She doesn't say it. She can't. The bell rings, sharp and jarring, shattering the moment. Students' voices flood the hallway, a chaotic symphony of laughter and sneakers. Claire lingers for a second, her fingers brushing Sarah's wrist. A touch so brief it could be an accident, but it burns like a brand. "See you at lunch?" Claire asks, her voice casual but her eyes anything but. Sarah nods, her heart a drumbeat she can't quiet. As Claire leaves, Sarah sinks into her chair, the wood creaking under her weight. She stares at the empty doorway, the faint scent of lavender still hanging in the air. This is the maw of it. A love she wants but can't claim. Not without risking her job, her place in this town, her carefully built life. She thinks of her students, the ones who look to her for answers about justice and courage. What would they think if they knew their teacher was hiding her heart? The day unfolds in a blur of lectures and quizzes, but Sarah's mind is elsewhere. She catches glimpses of Claire through the classroom window, her animated gestures as she reads Shakespeare to her students, the way her laugh carries across the quad. By lunch, Sarah's nerves are frayed, her thoughts a tangle of desire and dread. She heads to the teacher's lounge, where Claire's already sitting, a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby open in front of her. "You ever think about running away?" Claire asks out of nowhere as Sarah sits across from her. The question lands like a stone in still water. Sarah laughs, but it's hollow, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "Where would we go?" she says, trying to keep it light. Claire leans forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere but here." The words hang between them, heavy with possibility. Sarah's chest aches like her heart's trying to claw its way out. She wants to reach across the table, to take Claire's hand and say, "Yes, let's go." But the lounge door swings open, and Principal Daniels walks in, his presence a cold reminder of the world outside their bubble. Sarah pulls back, her hands retreating to her lap. That night Sarah lies awake, the hum of her ceiling fan a poor substitute for Claire's voice. She thinks of her parents who still ask when she'll settle down with a nice guy. She thinks of the school board, who'd have her head if they knew. And she thinks of Claire, who makes her feel alive in a way she hasn't since she was a teenager sneaking kisses with her first crush behind the bleachers. The memory stings, sharp and sweet, and Sarah wonders how long she can keep this secret before it breaks her. The next morning, Sarah wakes to the bitter scent of burnt coffee. She'd left the pot on too long, distracted by a dream of Claire's hand in hers, their fingers intertwined under a sky too big for Ohio. She pours the sludge down the sink, the gurgle of the drain mirroring her mood. At 32, she's built a life of routines, lesson plans, grocery lists, Sunday dinners with her parents. But Claire's presence is a crack in that foundation, letting light and chaos spill through. At school, the air feels charged, like the moment before a storm. Sarah's first period is a haze of dates and battles, her voice steady but her mind on Claire's classroom down the hall. She imagines Claire leaning against her desk, reading poetry with that fire in her voice, her students hanging on every word. Sarah envies their freedom to adore her openly. By second period, she's doodling Claire's initials in the margins of her planner, then scribbling them out, her pen digging into the paper. At lunch, Claire finds her in the courtyard, away from the teacher's lounge and its prying eyes. The autumn leaves crunch under their feet, a crisp sound that grounds Sarah in the moment. Claire's carrying a paper bag, her lunch untouched, and her expression is softer than usual, almost vulnerable. "I wrote something," she says, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "For you." Sarah's breath catches. She takes the paper, her fingers brushing Claire's, and unfolds it to find a poem. The words are raw, vivid lines about a heart caught in a cage of whispers, about longing that tastes like rain. Sarah's eyes sting, not from the words but from the weight of Claire's gaze, steady and unafraid. "You can't just do this," Sarah says, her voice cracking. "Not here." Claire steps closer, her boots scuffing the gravel. "Then where, Sarah? When?" Her voice is low, urgent, like she's been holding it in too long. The air between them hums, thick with the scent of fallen leaves and Claire's lavender perfume. Sarah wants to kiss her, right there under the oak tree, but the distant laughter of students stops her cold. She folds the poem and tucks it into her pocket, her hands shaking. The rest of the day is a tightrope walk. Sarah catches Claire's eye during a staff meeting, where Principal Daniels drones on about budget cuts. Claire winks, a fleeting gesture that sends heat rushing to Sarah's cheeks. She fumbles her pen, and it clatters to the floor, drawing a glance from Mrs. Thompson, the math teacher with a nose for gossip. Sarah's stomach churns. She's spent years being the perfect teacher, dependable, discreet, invisible. But Claire makes her want to be seen. After school, they end up in the library, grading papers under the hum of fluorescent lights. The room smells of old books and dust, a quiet sanctuary from the world outside. Claire's grading essays, her pen scratching softly, while Sarah tries to focus on her own stack. But her eyes keep drifting to Claire's hands, the way her fingers curl around the pen, the faint scar on her knuckle from a childhood fall she'd mentioned once, laughing. Sarah wants to know every story behind every mark on her. "You ever think about telling someone?" Claire asks suddenly, not looking up. Sarah's heart stumbles. "Telling who? About what?" she says, playing dumb, but her voice betrays her. Claire sets her pen down, her gaze locking onto Sarah's. "About us. About this." She gestures between them, her hand lingering in the air like a question. Sarah's throat tightens. She thinks of her parents, who'd clutch their Bibles and pray for her soul. She thinks of the school board, who'd call it unprofessional conduct. She thinks of the kids who'd whisper and stare. "We can't," she says, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know why." Claire leans back, her chair creaking. "I know, but I hate it." Her voice is raw, like she's swallowing glass. Sarah wants to reach for her, to smooth the tension from her brow, but her hands stay glued to her papers. The silence stretches, heavy with everything they're not saying. That night, Sarah lies awake again, the poem burning a hole in her pocket. She pulls it out, reading it by the dim glow of her phone. Each word feels like a pulse, a reminder of what she's risking, and what she's already losing by staying silent. She thinks of Claire's question, telling who? And for the first time she imagines an answer, everyone. The next day, Sarah's distracted, her lessons faltering. A student asks why she's so quiet, and she brushes it off with a smile that feels like a mask. By lunch, she's a wreck, her nerves frayed from dodging Claire's gaze. But Claire finds her again, this time in the empty stairwell, the air cool and smelling faintly of industrial cleaner. "We need to talk," Claire says, her voice firm but her eyes soft. "Really talk." Sarah's pulse races. She knows what's coming, a choice she's not ready to make. But Claire's standing so close, her breath warm against Sarah's cheek, and for a moment, the world feels small enough to hold them both. "Okay," Sarah says, her voice trembling. "But not here." They agree to meet after school, at a diner on the edge of town, where no one knows them. As Sarah drives there, the radio playing some country song about lost love, she feels the weight of her secret lifting just a little. But the fear is still there, sharp and cold, whispering that this could be the beginning, or the end. The diner smells of grease and burnt toast, its neon sign flickering outside like a heartbeat. Sarah sits in a corner booth, her fingers tracing the cracked vinyl seat, the hum of the jukebox a low drone in the background. She's early, her nerves a live wire as she waits for Claire. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Doris, pours her coffee, the bitter steam curling up like a warning. Sarah's 32, but tonight she feels like a teenager, caught between thrill and terror. Claire walks in, her leather jacket slung over one shoulder, her blonde hair tucked behind her ears. At 30, she carries herself like she owns the room, but her eyes soften when they find Sarah. She slides into the booth, her knee brushing Sarah's under the table, sending a spark up her spine. "You look like you're about to bolt," Claire says, her voice teasing but gentle. Sarah laughs, a shaky sound, and sips her coffee to steady herself. It burns her tongue, sharp and grounding. "I don't know how to do this," Sarah admits, her voice low, barely audible over the clink of dishes. Claire leans forward, her hands folded on the table, close enough that Sarah can see the faint freckles across her knuckles. "Do what?" Claire asks, but her tone says she knows. Sarah's chest tightens, the words stuck like stones in her throat. "Love you. Be with you. Risk everything." Instead she says this. In public. Her eyes dart to the other patrons. A trucker hunched over his burger, a couple bickering over pie. No one's watching, but Sarah feels exposed, like her heart's pinned to her sleeve. Claire's hand twitches like she wants to reach out, but she doesn't. "We're just two teachers having coffee," she says, her voice calm but her eyes blazing. "No one cares." Sarah wants to believe her, but the fear is a knot in her gut. She thinks of the school board, the parents, the kids who'd turn their secret into gossip. She thinks of her mother's voice, sharp with disapproval, asking why she's still single. "They'd care if they knew," Sarah whispers, her fingers tightening around her mug. The porcelain is warm, almost too hot, but she clings to it like a lifeline. Claire sighs, a sound heavy with frustration. "I'm tired of hiding, Sarah. Aren't you?" Her voice cracks just a little and Sarah sees the weight Claire's been carrying too. The late nights wondering if this is worth it, the ache of wanting more. Sarah's heart lurches. She wants to say yes, I'm exhausted, but the words won't come. Instead, she reaches for Claire's hand under the table, a small rebellion against her own fear. Claire's fingers are warm, steady, and for a moment, Sarah feels anchored. They talk for hours, the diner emptying around them. Claire tells stories of her childhood in Chicago, of sneaking out to poetry slams, of the first girl she kissed under a streetlight. Sarah listens, her coffee long cold, and shares her own memories. Summers at her grandparents' farm, the way she'd hide in the hayloft with romance novels, dreaming of a life bigger than her small town. The air between them softens, the tension easing into something warm, almost safe. But the world creeps back in. A man at the counter glances their way, his eyes lingering too long, and Sarah pulls her hand back, her pulse spiking. Claire notices, her jaw tightening. "We can't keep doing this," she says, her voice low but firm. "Sneaking around like we're criminals. I want to be with you, Sarah. Really be with you." Sarah's breath catches, the weight of Claire's words pressing against her ribs. She wants it too, God, she wants it, but the cost feels too high. Her job, her family, her place in this town. They're all she's ever known. "What if we lose everything?" she asks, her voice trembling. Claire leans closer, her eyes fierce. "What if we gain everything?" The question hangs there unanswered, as Doris clears their table, her movements slow and deliberate. Sarah's mind races, picturing a life where they don't have to hide. A life where she can hold Claire's hand in the daylight, where their love isn't a secret to be buried. But the fear is still there, cold and sharp, whispering that freedom comes at a price. They leave the diner as the sky darkens, the air cool and smelling of rain. Claire walks Sarah to her car, their steps slow, like they're delaying the inevitable. "Think about it," Claire says, her voice soft but urgent. "I'm not going anywhere, but I can't keep pretending this is enough." She brushes a strand of hair from Sarah's face, her touch lingering, and Sarah feels the world tilt. That night, Sarah dreams of a classroom where the walls are gone, where she's standing hand in hand with Claire under a wide open sky. But when she wakes, the walls are still there, pressing in, and the poem in her pocket feels like a confession she's not ready to make. She heads to school, the weight of Claire's words heavy on her shoulders, knowing that every step toward her is a step toward a choice she can't avoid. The school's fluorescent lights buzz overhead, a grating hum that matches the static in Sarah's head. It's been 3 days since the diner, and Claire's words, "I can't keep pretending this is enough," echo like a pulse. Sarah, 32, stands at her classroom window, watching students spill onto the quad, their laughter sharp against the autumn chill. The air smells of damp leaves and chalk dust, but all she can think about is Claire's lavender scent, the way it clings to her memory like a ghost. She hasn't seen Claire since that night, not really, just fleeting glimpses in the hallway, their eyes meeting for a split second before one of them looks away. Sarah's been dodging her, grading papers in her car, eating lunch at her desk. It's cowardice, she knows, but every time she thinks of facing Claire, her chest tightens with the weight of what's at stake. Her job, her family, her life in this town, where everyone knows her name but not her heart. The bell rings, a shrill jolt that pulls her back to the present. Her students shuffle in, their chatter a dull roar. But Sarah's mind is elsewhere. She's halfway through a lecture on the Reconstruction era when Claire appears in the doorway, her blonde hair catching the light, her expression unreadable. "Can I borrow a marker?" Claire asks, her voice casual, but her eyes are a storm. Sarah fumbles, handing her a dry erase marker, their fingers brushing. The touch is electric, and Sarah's voice falters mid-sentence. A student giggles and Sarah's face burns. After class, Claire lingers, closing the door behind the last student. The click of the latch feels like a gunshot. "You're avoiding me," Claire says, her voice low, almost a growl. She's 30, fearless in a way Sarah aches to be. But there's hurt in her eyes, raw and unguarded. Sarah opens her mouth to deny it, but the lie sticks in her throat. "I'm scared," she admits instead, her voice barely above a whisper. The confession hangs between them, heavy as the air before rain. Claire steps closer, her boots scuffing the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "I'm scared too," she says, her voice softening. "But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you." The words hit Sarah like a punch, stealing her breath. She wants to reach for Claire, to pull her close and forget the world outside. But her hands stay frozen at her sides. The scent of Claire's perfume, lavender, always lavender, fills the space, and Sarah's resolve cracks. They're interrupted by a knock. Mrs. Thompson, the math teacher, peers through the window, her eyes narrowing. Sarah steps back, her heart pounding, and Claire forces a smile, grabbing the marker and muttering something about lesson plans. But as she leaves, her fingers graze Sarah's wrist, a silent promise that leaves Sarah reeling. That night, Sarah drives to the lake on the edge of town, the water dark and still under the moon. She sits on the hood of her car, the metal cold against her thighs, and pulls out Claire's poem. The words blur as tears spill down her cheeks. Lines about love that burns like a fever, about a heart that refuses to stay quiet. She thinks of her students, the ones who write essays about freedom, and wonders what they'd think of a teacher too afraid to live her truth. The next day, Sarah finds a note slipped under her classroom door. Claire's handwriting bold and sure. "Meet me at the Old Oak after school. Please." Sarah's stomach twists, but she knows she can't run anymore. The day drags, each minute a slow drip of anticipation. When the final bell rings, she heads to the courtyard, the crunch of leaves under her feet like a countdown. Claire's waiting under the oak, her leather jacket slung over her shoulder, the setting sun turning her hair to gold. "I thought you wouldn't come," she says, her voice soft but steady. Sarah's throat tightens. "I almost didn't," she admits, her hands shoved in her pockets to hide their trembling. Claire steps closer, close enough that Sarah can hear her breathing, uneven and raw. "I love you," Claire says, the words simple but seismic. "And I'm done pretending I don't." Sarah's world tilts. She's spent so long building walls around her heart, her life, her truth, but Claire's words are a sledgehammer, cracking them open. "I love you too," Sarah whispers, her voice breaking. It's the first time she said it out loud, and it feels like flying and falling all at once. Claire's smile is radiant, but there's a shadow in her eyes, a question. What now? They stand there, the air thick with the scent of earth and possibility, as the sun dips below the horizon. Sarah knows this is the moment, where fear meets courage, where love meets consequence. She takes Claire's hand, her fingers trembling but sure, and for the first time, she feels the weight of her secret start to lift. The air under the oak tree is cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and Claire's lavender perfume. Sarah's hand is still in Claire's, her fingers laced tightly, as if letting go might unravel everything. At 32, Sarah's used to control lesson plans, classroom rules, her carefully curated life. But this moment feels like standing on a cliff's edge. Claire, 30, stands close, her green eyes searching Sarah's face, her breath a soft rhythm in the fading light. "What now?" Claire asks, her voice a mix of hope and fear, echoing Sarah's own heart. Sarah doesn't have an answer. Her mind races. Images of the school board's stern faces, her parents' disappointment, the whispers that would follow them down the hallways. But Claire's hand is warm, grounding, and for the first time, Sarah wonders if the risk might be worth it. "I don't know," she says, her voice raw. "But I don't want to lose you." The words spill out, unpolished, and Claire's smile is like sunlight breaking through clouds. They walk to Claire's car, parked in the faculty lot, the gravel crunching under their feet. The world feels quiet, like it's holding its breath. Inside the car, the air smells faintly of leather and coffee, and Claire turns on the radio, a soft indie song filling the space. "Let's just drive," she says, her voice steady but her hands gripping the wheel too tightly. Sarah nods, her heart pounding, and they pull out of the lot, the school shrinking in the rearview mirror. They end up at a park on the edge of town, where the trees form a canopy over a wooden bench. The air is crisp, the sound of crickets a gentle hum. They sit, their shoulders brushing, and Sarah feels the weight of the moment, the choice she's been avoiding for weeks. "If we do this," she says, her voice trembling, "we could lose everything. Our jobs. Our families." She thinks of her mother's Sunday roasts, her father's proud smile when she got tenure. Claire nods, her expression serious. "I know. But we could gain everything too." The words hang between them, heavy with truth. Sarah thinks of the poem in her pocket, the one Claire wrote, its lines burned into her memory. She pulls it out, smoothing the creases, and reads a line aloud. "A heart that whispers in the dark, too loud to stay silent." Her voice cracks and Claire's hand finds hers, their fingers intertwining. I wrote that for you, Claire says, her voice soft but fierce. Because you make me feel like I can't stay quiet anymore. Sarah's chest aches, a mix of fear and longing. She thinks of her students, the ones who write essays about courage, and wonders what she's teaching them if she can't be brave herself. I want to be with you, she says, the words a leap into the unknown. But I need time to figure out how. Claire nods, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I'll wait, she says. But not forever. The next day at school, the air feels different, like a storm's passed through. Sarah's more aware of Claire's presence, her laugh in the hallway, the way she leans against her desk during a break, her voice carrying through the walls as she reads Emily Dickinson to her class. Sarah's teaching a lesson on the Underground Railroad, and the irony isn't lost on her. Teaching about freedom while hiding her own truth. At lunch, Mrs. Thompson corners her in the teacher's lounge, her voice syrupy with concern. You and Claire seem close, she says, her eyes sharp. Sarah's stomach drops, but she forces a smile, her coffee mug trembling in her hands. Just colleagues, she says, the lie bitter on her tongue. Mrs. Thompson hums, unconvinced, and Sarah feels the walls closing in. That afternoon, Claire texts her. Meet me at the library after school. Sarah's heart races, but she goes, the scent of old books and dust of familiar comfort. Claire's waiting at their usual table, her grading forgotten, her expression serious. I heard Thompson talking, she says, her voice low. She's asking questions. Sarah's breath catches, the fear she's been pushing down rising like a tide. What do we do? She asks, her voice barely audible. Claire leans forward, her hand resting on the table, close but not touching. We decide, she says. Do we keep hiding or do we take a stand? Her voice is steady but her eyes are pleading, and Sarah feels the weight of the choice like a stone in her chest. She thinks of the diner, the park, the moments where she felt free. She thinks of the life she's built, and the one she could have. As they leave the library, the sun setting behind the school, Sarah takes Claire's hand, just for a moment, her fingers trembling but sure. It's a small act, but it feels like a revolution. She knows the road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time, she's ready to walk it, with Claire by her side. The school hallway smells of floor wax and teenage sweat, the kind of scent that clings to Sarah's clothes long after she leaves. It's Friday and the buzz of the weekend hums through the building, but Sarah, 32, feels like she's carrying a storm in her chest. Claire's words from the library, do we keep hiding or do we take a stand? Have been looping in her mind, relentless as a heartbeat. She glances at Claire's classroom door, where the faint sound of her reading Walt Whitman leaks through, her voice a melody Sarah could pick out in a crowd. At lunch, Sarah avoids the teacher's lounge, opting for her classroom instead. She sits at her desk, the wood scarred from years of use, and pulls out Claire's poem again. The paper's worn now, creased from too many readings, but the words still hit like a fist. Love that burns like a fever too fierce to be tamed. She traces the ink, her fingers trembling, and wonders how she got here. Caught between a life she knows and one she's only dared to dream. Claire finds her after school, slipping into the classroom with a quiet grace that makes Sarah's heart stutter. At 30, Claire's confidence is a quiet fire, her leather jacket slung over her arm, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon light. You're thinking too much, Claire says, her voice teasing but soft, like she's trying to coax Sarah out of her head. Sarah laughs, a brittle sound, and sets the poem down. I can't stop, she admits. This could ruin us. Claire sits on the edge of the desk, close enough that Sarah can smell her lavender perfume, feel the warmth of her presence. Or it could save us, Claire says, her eyes steady. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'd rather fight for this than live a lie. Her voice cracks just a little and Sarah sees the weight she's carrying too. The fear of rejection, of losing her place in this world they've both chosen. The air between them is charged, like the moment before lightning. Sarah wants to reach for her, to bridge the gap, but the fear is a cold hand on her heart. She thinks of her students, the ones who look to her for answers, and wonders what lesson she's teaching by staying silent. What if we tell someone? She says, her voice barely audible. Just one person. To start. Claire's eyes widen, a spark of hope igniting. Who? She asks, leaning closer. Sarah thinks of her best friend Lisa, a fellow teacher who's always been her confidant. Lisa's warm, open-minded, but even she might not understand. Lisa, Sarah says, her voice steadier now. She'd keep it quiet. She'd listen. Claire nods, her hand brushing Sarah's, a silent "I'm with you." That evening, Sarah invites Lisa over, the scent of takeout pizza filling her small apartment. Lisa's 35, a science teacher with a laugh that fills rooms, but tonight she's quiet, sensing Sarah's nerves. They sit on the couch, the TV muted, and Sarah's heart pounds as she tries to find the words. There's someone, she starts, her voice shaking. Someone I love. Lisa's eyes soften, but there's a question in them, and Sarah knows she can't stop now. It's Claire, the English teacher. The silence is deafening, broken only by the hum of the fridge. Lisa's face shifts, surprise, then something like understanding. Oh, Sarah, she says, her voice gentle. I had no idea. She reaches for Sarah's hand, her touch warm and steady, and Sarah feels tears prick her eyes. Are you happy? Lisa asks, and Sarah nods, her throat too tight to speak. It's not acceptance, not yet, but it's a start, and Sarah feels a weight lift, like she's taken her first real breath in weeks. Lisa leaves with a promise to keep their secret, but Sarah knows this is just the beginning. The next day, she and Claire meet at the diner again, the air thick with the scent of coffee and syrup. Claire's quieter than usual, her fingers tapping the table, a nervous rhythm. How'd it go? She asks, her voice low. Sarah smiles, a real one this time. She didn't run screaming, she says, and Claire laughs, the sound bright and warm. But the moment is fleeting. At school on Monday, Sarah notices whispers, students glancing her way, Mrs. Thompson's sharp eyes lingering too long. By lunch the rumors spread. Someone saw her and Claire at the diner, their hands too close, their smiles too telling. Sarah's stomach churns, the fear clawing at her chest. She finds Claire in the library, her face pale, her hands gripping a book like a lifeline. They're talking, Claire says, her voice tight. What do we do? Sarah's mind races, the walls of her world closing in. But Claire's hand finds hers under the table, and for the first time, Sarah doesn't pull away. We face it, she says, her voice trembling but sure. Together. It's not a plan, not yet, but it's a promise, and as Claire's fingers tighten around hers, Sarah feels the first stirrings of courage. The school's hallways feel tighter today, the air thick with whispers and the sharp tang of whiteboard markers. Sarah, 32, walks to her classroom, her steps heavy, each glance from a student or colleague a pinprick against her skin. The rumors taken root. Someone saw her and Claire at the diner, their hands brushing, their eyes too soft. By morning it's spread like wildfire, fueled by Mrs. Thompson's knowing smirks and the students' relentless curiosity. Sarah's heart pounds, a drumbeat of dread, but beneath it, a spark of defiance flickers. Claire's waiting in the teacher's lounge, her blonde hair pulled back, her leather jacket slung over a chair. At 30, she's a storm barely contained, her green eyes blazing with a mix of anger and resolve. They're calling a meeting, she says, her voice low, barely audible over the hum of the coffee machine. After school. Daniels wants to address concerns. The words land like a stone in Sarah's gut. Principal Daniels, with his starched shirts and stern gaze, has never been one for nuance. Sarah's hands tremble as she pours coffee, the bitter steam grounding her. The day drags, each lesson a blur of dates and facts Sarah barely registers. Her students are restless, their whispers louder than usual, and she catches snippets. Ms. Carter and Ms. Reed, did you hear? She wants to scream, to tell them love isn't a scandal, but her throat's too tight, her courage too thin. By lunch she's a wreck, hiding in her classroom with a stale sandwich, the scent of chalk dust a faint comfort. Claire finds her slipping in without knocking, the door clicking shut like a secret sealed. We need a plan, she says, her voice steady but her hands fidgeting with a pen. Sarah looks at her, the woman who's unraveled her world, and feels a rush of love so fierce it hurts. What do we say? Sarah asks, her voice cracking. That we're in love? That it's none of their business. Claire's lips twitch, almost a smile. Both, she says. But we say it together. The meeting is in the library, the air heavy with the smell of old books and tension. Daniels sits at the head of the table, flanked by Mrs. Thompson and a few other teachers, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. Sarah and Claire sit side by side, their knees brushing under the table, a silent anchor. Daniels clears his throat, his voice clipped. There've been concerns about inappropriate behavior. Sarah's stomach twists, but Claire's hand finds hers under the table, her grip fierce. Mrs. Thompson speaks up, her voice dripping with false concern. Students are talking. Parents too. We have a reputation to uphold. Sarah feels the room spin, the weight of their stares crushing. But Claire's voice cuts through, sharp and clear. We're not breaking any rules, she says. We're two adults who care about each other. That's not a crime. The room goes quiet, the air electric, and Sarah feels a surge of pride, mixed with terror. Daniels leans forward, his eyes narrowing. This is a small town. People talk. We can't have distractions. Sarah's heart sinks, but Claire doesn't flinch. The only distraction is the gossip, she says, her voice rising. We're good teachers. Our students' grades prove it. Let us do our jobs. Sarah's breath catches and she finds her voice. She's right, she says, her words trembling but sure. We're not hurting anyone. The meeting ends without resolution, just a vague warning to keep things professional. But as they leave, Sarah feels the shift. Her fear is still there, but it's laced with something new, resolve. She and Claire walk to the parking lot, the evening air cool against their skin, the sound of crickets a soft backdrop. We did it, Claire says, her voice soft but triumphant. Sarah nods, her hand finding Claire's, their fingers lacing together in the open air. That night, Sarah lies awake, the hum of her ceiling fan a steady rhythm. She thinks of the meeting, of Claire's fierce defense, of the way their hands fit together. She thinks of her students, the ones who write about justice, and knows she can't teach them to be brave if she's not. For the first time, she imagines a future where she doesn't hide. A future where love isn't a secret. The next morning, Sarah finds a note on her desk, anonymous but sharp. Think about the kids. Her heart lurches, but she tucks it away, refusing to let it break her. She heads to Claire's classroom, where Claire's reading poetry to her students, her voice a melody that soothes Sarah's nerves. When their eyes meet, Claire smiles and Sarah knows they're in this together, no matter what comes next. The morning sun filters through Sarah's classroom blinds, casting slanted shadows across her desk. At 32, she's used to the rhythm of school. Bells chatter, the scratch of pencils, but today it feels like a stage, every move watched. The anonymous note from yesterday, think about the kids, sits heavy in her pocket, its words a splinter in her mind. She glances out the window where Claire's classroom is visible across the quad, her silhouette moving as she writes on the board. Sarah's heart aches, a mix of love and fear that's become her constant companion. Claire, 30, strides into Sarah's classroom during a break, her leather jacket slung over her shoulder, her blonde hair catching the light. You okay? She asks, her voice low, her eyes searching. Sarah nods, but her fingers fidget with a pen, betraying her. Another note, she says, pulling it from her pocket. Claire's jaw tightens as she reads it, her fingers crumpling the edges. Cowards, she mutters, tossing it into the trash. They don't get to define us. But the notes keep coming, slipped under doors, taped to lockers, each one sharper than the last. This isn't the place for that. You're setting a bad example. Sarah feels the walls closing in, the whispers in the hallways growing louder, the stairs more pointed. By lunch, she's unraveling, her sandwich untouched, the scent of coffee in the teacher's lounge turning her stomach. Claire sits across from her, her hand hovering near Sarah's, but she doesn't touch her. Not here, not now. That afternoon, Principal Daniels calls them into his office. The air smells of polished wood and stale cologne, and his face is grim. "I've had complaints," he says, his voice clipped. "Parents. Board members. They're concerned about your relationship." Sarah's heart stops, but Claire leans forward, her voice steady. "Our personal lives don't affect our teaching," she says. "Check our records. Our students are thriving." Daniels sighs, rubbing his temples. "It's not about your teaching. It's about perception." Sarah finds her voice trembling but clear. "Perception shouldn't dictate our lives," she says, surprising herself. Daniels looks at her, his expression unreadable, and says they'll revisit the issue. As they leave, Claire squeezes Sarah's hand, a fleeting touch that feels like defiance. Outside, the air is crisp, the sound of leaves crunching under their feet, a small rebellion against the silence. That night, Sarah invites Claire over, her apartment warm with the scent of candles and pasta on the stove. They sit on the couch, their knees touching, and Sarah feels the weight of the week lift, just a little. "I'm tired of being afraid," she says, her voice raw. Claire's eyes soften and she pulls Sarah close, her lips brushing her forehead. "Then let's stop," she whispers. "Let's be us." The next day they make a decision. No more hiding. At school they walk into the teacher's lounge hand in hand, the room going quiet, the air thick with shock. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widen, but Lisa, Sarah's friend, smiles, a small gesture that feels like a lifeline. By lunch the news is everywhere, the whispers now a roar. But Sarah feels lighter, like she shed a skin she didn't know she was wearing. The backlash comes fast. Parents email, some supportive, others furious. A board meeting is called and Sarah and Claire prepare to face it, their hands clasped under the table as they sit before a room of stern faces. Sarah speaks, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "We're teachers," she says. "We teach your kids to be honest, to be brave. How can we do that if we're not?" Claire adds, her voice fierce. "We love each other. That doesn't make us less. It makes us human." The board votes to keep them, but the tension lingers, a shadow over their days. Some parents pull their kids, others rally behind them, and Sarah's students start asking questions. Some cruel, some curious, all searching for truth. Sarah answers honestly, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. Claire does the same, her poetry lessons now laced with stories of love and courage. Months later at the spring talent show, Sarah and Claire stand together, their hands linked, watching their students perform. The air smells of popcorn and nervous excitement, the stage lights casting a warm glow. A student dedicates a song to them, her voice clear and unafraid, and Sarah feels tears prick her eyes. They've lost some things, friendships, approval, the illusion of safety, but they've gained more. A life where love isn't a secret, where they can be whole. As the crowd applauds, Claire leans close, her breath warm against Sarah's ear. "Worth it," she whispers. Sarah smiles, her heart full. Every second. They step into the future, hand in hand, their love a quiet revolution in a small town that's learning to listen.